Hi, Alex. Good to see you.
Hi, Barbara. Let's talk about Biggest Fleet 2025.
Ooh, exciting. So, yes, in terms of 2025, for those of us who do not know the concept of what Biggest Fleet actually is, could you introduce it? Could you share what the problem it was meant to solve and where you're going with it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're all in this industry of trying to automate cleaning. And so we are all on our owns. Like, we don't really know, like, is the industry progressing? In what way is it progressing? And so we thought, if there's no visibility of actual fleets out there and how big they are and how they evolve, how can we actually do our work? And we wanted to change that. So in 2024, we came up with this crazy idea. Can we not just list the biggest fleets out there? And we are now in the second round, in the second year. So yeah, we were just on the lookout for verifiable, comparable data we can work with. And that's how the biggest fleet started. And in 2024, we were like 42 contestants participating in the ranking. We are now at 97. We have ambassadors across the world and representing like the European, the Americas, and the Asian markets. And we try to, give local insights beyond the obvious, like what's different in terms of culture, infrastructure, business logic. So it's a lot of work, and I think the team has done a great job, and we just want the industry to, yeah, well, profit from it and um, hopefully grow from there.
Amazing. And just a question, because this year also I've noticed that there are ambassadors. What is the role
Yeah.
of ambassadors? Yeah, what?
Oh, yeah, we just learn on the way that, it needs a lot of trust to actually expose your fleet and go public with it. It's a bit of like, pants down. And so we thought finding reliable key people, key players in the industry that actually help us in the different regions would be great. So we're like super happy to have, for example, Elad Inbar. He's like the founder of Robot Lab, rolling out a robotic franchise throughout the Americas, not just North America, but also the South. We have Rainer Kento, which is like the Mr. Robot of Europe himself. And we have even like a Chinese, I can say business partner slash friend of mine, Lambert Zhang, who was willing to actually, open up and give us like the Chinese and Asian perspective in particular. So these ambassadors will, help us identify fleets, convince fleet owners to actually get listed, and also provide us with insights. So in the back of our magazine, we're gonna publish very, very soon next week. You'll also find some interviews with them, so to get to know them in case you don't know who these people are. And by the way, on in this case, thank you very much to the ambassadors. It means a lot that they give their names and their efforts for making this like bigger and bigger and bigger.
Absolutely. Big shout out. And yeah, exciting for the next week. Well, the biggest fleet obviously is growing, and according to your research, we can see the size of the research also doubled, right? So from
Yeah, yeah, yeah. More than double actually. So we're now at 97 fleets. So the moment you have like the ranking in your hands, newsletters, LinkedIn posts, this video, and the magazines go out next week. But we are now at 97 fleets, which compiles 14,000 robots. So that's already something. I mean, it's not like for sure we're not covering the whole industry, but it gives like I think the best insight you can have right now in how things are evolving.
super. And what are your thoughts about what it actually reflects? How does it reflect on the industry? Because the biggest fleet is expanding. What does this expansion tell us about how industry is doing overall?
I mean, I talked to the ambassadors beforehand, and we all agree that in all of the regions we are covering, we're basically left the piloting stage. So people are no longer tinkering around like, is robotics something for me? It's more about like, how to apply it. How can I make this work for me, my company, or like the cleaning setting I want to like get automated. So I think Yeah, this is mainly it. I think there's some distortion to it between 2024 and 2025. We also upped our research capacities.
Mhm.
So the biggest fleet research team grew significantly. So it's not just fleets that entered 2025, but there might also be fleets we couldn't identify in 2024. So
Mhm.
the growth is coming from both ends. I think fleets leaving the piloting stage and more identified fleets. And probably there are also some people that were a bit shy 2024. And now that they see what the results are and that as an industry we can learn from it, they actually signed up for 2024, even with like 2024 numbers, for example.
Yeah, super. And in terms of comparing 2025 to 2024, are there any structural differences? I mean, I've noticed some in the research paper, but could you brief in your words what do they?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to it. For example, we now finally are able to list, also thanks to our ambassador in Asia, more of like the Chinese and Asian fleets.
Mhm.
So I do think there are way more out there than we can actually see right now, even in the 2025 ranking. But in 2024, it was basically non-existent. And then there are like new industries entering. So beyond retail, we have like the public sector, hospitality, transit. I think if you have the time, we can go into this a bit deeper later on.
Yeah,
And yeah, we just see a lot of diversifications. There's also, for example, in Europe, even if you look at a single region, we have the Baltics now coming. We
yeah.
thought it might be the south of Europe, but no, it's
Mhm.
the Baltics. And generally speaking, I think particularly the public sector after retail now is going strong. Just to give you an idea, I think we should talk about this methodology of radar points, how we calculate the size
Yeah.
of a fleet a bit later on. But like the public sector in terms of like these radar points more than double from 213 to 746, something around this. So it's a big increase, although this compared to the retail sector, still like a small field.
Super. I'm definitely going to quiz you in detail about all of those points as we go along. But let's go first with the leader in terms of industry for within the research. So retail is remains the dominant driver. And why do you think the sector keeps going so fast ahead of the others? Do the other industries have room to compete? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, the return on investment is here, and I mean, it's clearly like a business aspect of like, okay, let's roll this out. And I think like particularly retail in the US, I think we have to separate because retail is like one of the very, very good examples why we have to see the world in and look at the different parts of the world from a different perspective. So if you look at retail in let's say the US or North America in general, you have like these huge layouts, Walmart, Sam's Club, and these guys.
Mhm.
And then you have Europe somewhere in the middle where there's a lot of like uh different owners, more like of a franchising system. And then you go to Asia and you have like these little convenience stores. So you can't really say retail in general, but I think retail is like on the more standardized end of
Mhm.
all the cleaning scenarios we have. And so I think this makes rollout easier. And well, on the way, as these are like the furthest down or the farthest down in rolling out these concepts, we can also learn like what are the obstacles if you go down this in terms of like deployments and all these obstacles you might have. So big retail is scaling. I mean, they were also the ones up in the ranking in 2024, but we now also have like convenience chains. I mean, Quick Trip entering, Europe catching up with Denner, Rossmann grew the fleet significantly, and we also have like Japan and other Asian contestants nowadays. But I think we're gonna talk about Asia in particular later on in this podcast.
Yes, and I just wanted to ask actually about Quick Trip. So that's a big surprise. It's a quick entry.
Yeah, it was a big surprise for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought like, okay, I think, I mean, I'm a born European, I can't hide it. And I think it, like it's a very specific way in the US to do business.
Mhm.
Like you have these, I don't know, 1,000 something or 900x retail stores, and you think like, okay, if I go into robotics, I go like full steam ahead. I'm not doing 100 robots, I do 1,200 robots. And when we heard these numbers, we were really, really eager to, qualify these because that's what's important for us in the ranking. And if we can't really be sure about the actual numbers, we leave the contestant out. So our research team really needs the hard numbers. And there's 1,200 Poodle robots in this case, in this contract. And what I find so significant is not that another retailer in the US is catching up and they have more modest layouts than a Walmart. But what I found so significant is that they decided for a Chinese manufacturer, Pudu. And in the US, like in 2024, you always had this Tenant Brain Corp twin. Brain Corp providing software navigation, Tenant the hardware. I mean, Tenant is the biggest machine manufacturer in our industry. But suddenly there's Pudu coming to it, and that breaks this monoculture. And I think that that's really, really interesting. Also in terms of visibility, people are used to big machines in Walmart, but now they go to Quick Trip and they see like these small Pudu CC1s roaming around, taking TikToks and Instagrams. And so, yeah, I think Pringle Robotics, like the service partner rolling these things out, they have a lot to do right now. And it just shows like other formats than big retail, like convenience, proves to be scalable nationally as well. So very, very exciting. And was like, closer to end of this year that this thing went public. So yeah, happy to see Quick Trip on number 3 as
Yeah,
a
amazing.
newbie.
Yeah, and maybe let's stay in the America region for now. Why can American chains scale fleets so quickly compared to Europe and Asia, do you reckon? I think you touched upon it, but let's just dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, first, it's like what I've already mentioned. Like,
Mhm.
I think it's a different kind of decision-making process. Like,
Mhm.
okay, you calculate the ROI, in case you're convinced, then go for it, full steam ahead. I think that's a very entrepreneurial way of thinking.
Mhm.
I think it basically just goes from like a single pilot to like full-fledged nationwide rollout. Um, it's a bit unfair because like the retail structure in Europe is different. You have a lot of like, owners, and then it's more of a franchise like Edeka, for example, in the German-speaking countries, where you had to convince every single owner of every single outlet to actually deploy robotics. So in the US, that's not the case. Like, there's like C-level decision, and then you're gonna roll out. And then, well, you have to have the strong balance sheet to, I don't know, do 8 figures investments. Once you're convinced that the ROI is clear, then yeah, go for it. There's another thing in Europe, usually, at least like the concepts we know. It's the regular staff that's supposed to clean the store like before opening or after closing or even in between. It's not the case in the US. In the US, you always, or not, or very often, you have like contractors doing the cleaning.
Mhm.
So basically, for you, it's in calculation. Should I invest, I don't know, 8 figures?
Mhm.
And how is my return on investment in case I just get rid of all the floor cleaning in terms of outsourcing? And yeah, we talked about highly standardized store formats. There's like a lot of ways and financial instruments to actually finance these fleets. So infrastructure is there. And I mean, the US Americans, they're just brave. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, and Pudu has just entered the US market as well. Let's maybe.
Well, at least with a splash, like
Mhm.
we do have some friends over there at Pudu, and I do know like one of the brightest people at Pudu are working on the US market.
Mhm.
Because when you come from a Chinese manufacturer perspective, usually you start with well, your home market, and then you go through, towards Japan and Korea, because you think like, okay, they're looking at quality, I have to prove myself outside of China. And then you have a choice. Do I go to Europe or do I go to North America? And usually, Chinese manufacturers decide for Europe first. And this is also the route Pudu went.
Mhm.
And after Europe, some of their like most talented sales people then moved to the US because like, okay, now we have to establish ourselves in the US. And I do know they are working hard for years already to crack the US market, but come on, like with like entrance at number three, you made the splash. So yeah, pretty exciting for these guys, I guess.
Super. And do you think there are what further implications of that Pudu entering the US market can there be for the OEMs?
Oh, yeah. I think so because we in the industry we still have to wrap our heads around how is this done? Is, for example, Chinese hardware okay in the US? How do I position myself in terms of data ownership, in terms of IT security, in terms of like infrastructures to deploy and actually run these fleets, all these kinds of questions. And the moment you have, you know, a role model for an alternative to Tenant and BrainCorp,
Mhm.
uh, y- you know, you start having choice, and there's like actual competition. And I do think it helps the market a lot because like we need this sort of movement here.
Mhm.
And finally, North America is moving in these terms. And yeah, competition just increases in convenience and grocery. And I think that's a good thing. And I do think that concepts like Asian hardware, Western software is something in combination that could work really well. So let's just see how this actually shifts the US market. And let's see if like the innovation cycle even like increases. That's speed-wise. Let's see.
Super. I'm going to move us to Europe now a little bit. And you did mention about Central and Eastern Europe rising influence. What is behind
Yeah.
that?
Well, you know, when you look at Europe and as naive as we were, you probably expect like the German-speaking countries, you know, to be bold in robotics. And yeah, usually manufacturers enter the market and they focus on the German-speaking countries, maybe the UK, and then you might think about Scandinavia
Mhm.
because like of well like you know the salaries and wages there and labor shortages and then you ask yourself like what's next? Is it, you know, is it the south of Europe? But no, we can actually see the Baltic countries showing up, and it's actually showing up nicely in the 2025 compared to the 2024. So we have some strong public sector fleets. B plus N entered. We have like Baltic supermarkets, relatively small fleets, but LV, IKI, Rimi, they are entering like for the first time. So we can expect some growth there over the next years to come. And they have some very digital forward operators, and the adoption barriers don't seem to be that high. So, you know, they're just doing it. So it's really nice. Beyond that, we have like the classic airports. I don't know why, but this is how it is. Like robots show up at airports first, and then they're looking for the real scenarios beyond these flagship environments. And besides Central Europe, we also have like now Zurich Airport, for example, with a
Oh, okay.
fleet, and in Budapest is there. Yeah, we have FM companies also that show up in the ranking. And what I also found significant is that, you know, they entered the ranking. It was like, oh, we were underrepresented in 2024. We're gonna sign up. Here we are. Look at us. This is our robots, and yeah, we like it. So welcome to the Baltics in the biggest fleet 2025.
Super, super exciting. And about more mature players in the field. So how do Denner or Rossmann, would you say, illustrate in terms of yeah, the more mature players, how do they illustrate the European scaling pattern when you look at the older players?
Yeah, I think it's a more conservative growth. I mean, compared to the 1,200 poodles for Quick Trip we discussed just a few minutes ago, and then entering with 200 poodles again, by the way. But it's just a uh, I don't know. They're entering at number seven. it's 200 robots. I think it's still a challenge in terms of like scaling this, rolling this out, like implementing like all of these robots and making sure technical maintenance is there. But I think it's way more conservative. I'm sure like the pilots have been running for longer time than usually the pilots run in the US. Rossmann is a good example because you can see the adoption speed. We had like 45 Gaussian machines last year. Now it's 170. So that's a big year-over-year growth, but it's still conservative. We're not going into the four figures, for example. We are like in the modest hundreds, but I think this is what represents Europe the most. So we expand slowly after successful pilots. We are for sure not having like a moonshot project going on here. It's a slow adoption. It's more fragmented. We talked about like these local ownership structures and local managers that have to be convinced. And yeah, but we still have these standardized formats like
Mhm.
drugstores, discounters. So I'm sure the scaling will accelerate, and probably 2026, 2027, we see a lot of, more Europeans following Denner or Rossmann.
Yeah, fingers crossed for that too. And I'm I'm slowly moving us and more east. So when it comes to Asia, Asia appears as well to be one of the fastest rising regions. What are your thoughts? What stands out to you when it comes to those?
Yeah. I mean, in all segments, in all regions, we have some growth. So we're not trying to sell like, a particular region or segment is growing more than the rest. It's just like we notice like in these categories, we have significant growth. The whole market basically is growing. With Asia, I think it's the most difficult to identify these fleets because usually they're shy of like giving numbers, and that's what our research team needs. So if the numbers are not there, we leave them out. But we now have like 19 fleets at least, and I mean from of 97 fleets, so that's roughly a fifth.
Mhm.
And that means like it doubled almost from 2024. So the RADA score, like the combined score, is now 1,800. So you calculate the RADA score by counting a normal robot times five and a microbot, which is a machine less than 10,000 US dollars for small vacuuming or so, with 1 point. So this is how we build a score. We analyze how many robots, how many microbots, robots times five, plus the microbots. That gives us the score to compare fleets that come, with different sizes of robots. So the radar score for Asia is 1,800. And we see Japan, India showing up. It's exciting to see because in Asia, you always hear this argument, particularly like from Singaporeans. Yeah, in Singapore, robots work because, our wages and salaries are high, so it makes sense for us. But when you see them popping up in India and Vietnam, there might be other reasons as well why you want to automate. We have China. We put a lot of effort into identifying Chinese fleets and actually figuring out how many robots are there running around. And then, of course, the mentioned Singapore. Mainly it's transit airports. That's usually the flagship things to present the world that you're like, on the edge. And then, yeah, for research, it's really difficult language barriers. I mean, you have to go into Japanese, into Chinese, into Korean. There are no English translations. So it helps a lot that FieldBots has ties to Singapore. We now have this Chinese ambassador, Lambert, that helps us a lot.
Mhm.
But I do think there's a lot of like
What to do.
fleets out there we haven't identified yet. And there's an invitation. Asia, I know you're way stronger than your representative in Biggest Fleet 2025. Sign up. I think it's good for the industry. We can talk about this a bit later. And yeah, so that's Asia right now. Doubling, if we see this doubling every year, then that's going to be very big.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a lot of potential, and you've identified that it's not purely that sample is not purely representative of what's there.
Well, that's at least my personal opinion, but I think it's fair to say.
Mhm. Super. And we have focused a lot so far on private sector, but public sector as well has really grown in the research in this year. So
Yeah.
What explains this, in your opinion?
Um, Well, first of all, I want to mention that for us it's very important to not just state the obvious,
Mhm.
because we really want to add some insights to our industry with biggest fleet. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to identify trends, and one of these trends is like, okay, we think we found something in all of these data points. I mean, we're talking now about 97 fleets. It's 14,000 robots. That tells us something. And I think like in the data sentiment, we do see like public or almost public companies, they are there. They grew from 6 to 16, so almost the same growth story we had with Asia, with doubling their fleets. And in terms of points, it's even like 2.5 times the amount of radar points from 213 to 746. So of course, we have airports. We discussed this already. I'm gonna skip this. Zurich Airport is the newest with 26 Gaussian machines. That's already like more than 100 score points added. But we do have education experimenting a lot. So particularly in North America, you see a lot of universities, higher education. They are looking into automating their cleaning. So the US definitely is a hotspot. We also have some educational providers in Canada. And then we do have healthcare. Actually, in different regions, we have this in Europe, we have this in the US. I think special about the public sector is that it has a high visibility.
Hmm.
So you have like, running them around at airports or whatever like represents a country, healthcare, transportation, and you see these robots, then I do think it's a nice exposure of this sort of technology and making people familiar and comfortable with these machines. So yeah, it's visibility for sure. And I do think it's also like increased hygiene expectations in the public sector
Hmm.
post COVID.
I think you're touching on this, but I'm going to drill a little bit further because universities specifically, according to your research, have doubled their footprint, right? Is there anything else would you say that is helping that acceleration? Yeah, in your thoughts, this adoption in education.
Um, I think the next point in rolling this out in education beyond converting these pilots into real world fleets is classroom cleaning. It's a bit
Okay.
like with hospitality. We might talk about hospitality later on. I'm not sure, but I think classroom cleaning is like the one thing we have to crack. I'm expecting rapid scaling in North America for sure, but we're already thinking about okay, what are the new trends we might be able to identify in the next rankings to come. The rapid scaling is just based on the very, very huge real estate these companies have. I mean, they have so many campuses, so it's only natural that
Mm.
in case these pilots go well, and why shouldn't they? They just have to choose the right models, the right suppliers. So I think we have all the ingredients for this growth, and it will be there. But particularly room cleaning, not just the floors and hallways, this will be really interesting to see. And I'm sure they have to experiment with smaller robots as well. So particularly these microbots for vacuuming, for example. But right now, it's still small fleets. I think there's a lot of potential they can tap into. And yeah, but education is big. I mean, they're roughly one third of the whole public sector we've bundled in that particular article in our magazine. So let's see. Yeah, there's a lot to it for sure.
Let's zoom into hospitality also, just because you mentioned this. Yes, if you were to ideate what's next in hospitality and how Biggest Fleet represents it, what are your thoughts?
In terms of hospitality, I mean, we have this Travelodge case. It was there in 2024 already. So it's about 7,500 microbots in the UK for room cleaning. Rumors have it, and I think this is also channeled through our ambassadors that there are like more hotel chains to come. So for example, in the interview with Elad Inbar, he said like they are the sole provider for robotics for Hilton in the US until 2030. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of experiments going on there right now. I do know that there are other hotel chains that think about hotel room cleaning. I do know manufacturers focusing on providing autonomous machinery for room cleaning. So I do think hospitality in general is beyond piloting now. It's just like massive scaling, and yeah, let's see, let's see. I think there only have to be like one, two, three more travel lodges around the world starting this, and then this will be like a massive thing, and probably also has the potential to overtake retail.
Wow, looking forward to the competition next year then. Um, and just because I'm going to take us to the more technical aspect, because the research discusses the parallel worlds, so of robots only, microbots only, and mixed fleets. What is this segmentation actually in practice?
Um, I think a lot of like the success for your robotics fleet, be it you're an end customer or your facility management contractor, building service contractor, as they call it in North America, is like picking the right robots for, you know, their use cases. I think like in the beginning with like all the piloting, we had to learn it's not you have a scenario and then you take the robot and tell the robot do this scenario. It's a bit the other way around. You have this robot, like it's capable of doing X, and you have to find a use case that needs this X. So depending on like what segment you're catering to, what market you're in, you need a different kind of robot. And we had these examples in retail where the sizes are so significantly different from, let's say, Japan to the US. And we have these scenarios everywhere, not just regional, but also in our different segments. Take room cleaning, compared to hallways and entrances and these kinds of things. So you either have like big machines or small machines. And funny enough, the fleets always show like they're either big machines and full-fledged big machines. So the fleet is in goes into this direction, or we have like fleets with 100 plus small machines for specific scenarios. So if you're in retail, be it on the retailer's end or like a building service contractor, you probably deploy big robots like retail giants, Walmart, or their Sam's. You need big machines, and then you don't have like any small machines. Although you might have office space in other scenarios where these small machines work, but you're focusing on big machines. They are bringing you ROI. Or
Mhm.
you're in office and education, and you start with the small robots, and then you're so focused on rolling out these concepts and dealing like with the very unique challenges of like small robots that we don't really see mixed fleets of big and small robots. And these are like the two parallel worlds. We do some convergence. So the only mixed fleets we see is with facility management companies because they have both segments. They cater to both segments. So Mighty, for example, is like a good example in the UK that do have a diverse fleet, but it's completely different economics. It's completely different workflows. So well, if you have both, you master both parallel worlds, but they're still parallel worlds. So we don't expect this to really uh be something we're gonna see in 2026, 2027, that everybody has like both categories. But it's very interesting for building service contractors because they have to master both. They're mastering both in terms of manual cleaning right now. So yeah, they don't have a choice. So let's see if we can see more diverse fleets and how they make these fleets happen in future.
Mhm. And there is a growing fragmentation of manufacturers, right? So there's more and more competition in the market. What do you think it means for the facility service providers?
Well, the more choice you have, uh, the more likely it is that you make like these choices and that you're picking the machine or the manufacturer that really works for your scenario. So once you've decided for different models and different machines for different scenarios, you're gonna have like a lot of efforts integrating these machines into your fleets virtually, data flows, software, fleet management. You have to have something that ties your different manufacturers together. You have to also solve a lot of like logistical problems like spare parts. You have different software ecosystems. You have like a technical team that needs to know a lot about different machines that might be built completely different. And so I think the ones that master this complexity, first choosing the right models, knowing what to choose from, and then actually deploying these successfully in these particular segments where these machines are needed, and also being able to have the workflows in the background to keep these fleets up and running. This is, I think, your competitive advantage as a FM contractor in the 21st century. So it's an opportunity here for facility management contractors to actually become integrators, because that's what you're doing. You're integrating your human workforce or your people into like a human workforce. And I think we have the same challenge on the machine and how to integrate machines into a robotic or autonomous workforce.
Yeah, super. And how do you see the differences between the more traditional OEMs and the new market entrants?
Um, it's actually interesting to see because when you roam around at these trade shows nowadays, it's really two generations of manufacturers already.
Mhm.
So we have like I mean, there was a phase zero where the traditional manufacturers thought about like, can I just develop a kit and this kit makes my existing machines roaming around autonomously. But like the first real phase was like these guys, Gosham, Lion Spot, coming up with these robots, having like substantial funding and nowadays have like a very interesting range of products out there. And they're in the market now for 10 years, 15 years. And I think there was a very steep learning curve for all parties involved, not just, the engineering, R&D. A lot of R&D, by the way, is done in China nowadays. So not just on the engineering end, but also on the distribution end. I think guys like Rainer Kender, the ambassador for Europe, he invested a lot of like personal time and effort and also his capital to actually make these robots ready for the real world. And then of course we also have this on the end customer side, FM contractors or corporates that deploy these fleets. So that was a steep learning curve with a lot of efforts. And what's interesting to see is that there, after phase zero and phase one, there's now a phase two coming. So we have like the Xenobots and Rosevits and all these relatively new brands that pop up. Ecovacs, like the robotics pioneer from domestic cleaning robots entering with their machines. I think they made their European entrance at CMS in Berlin this year. Um, these guys, I think, do know how cleaning works. I think they, of course, learned a lot also from their competition. They have like, a new financial power. They're like super motivated. They do know there's somebody in the market already, so they have to probably think a bit differently. But as Rainer put it in his interview, I think it boils down to, are they able to set up the service infrastructure, the distribution network fast enough to actually be able to compete with, let's say, the Goshams. I do think there's like one breed of manufacturers that might have like a smaller upper hand here. That's like the Purus or Kinons, because they come from delivery robots. They do master this, in another field, like indoor delivery robots. You see hotels bring you something, you order at reception desk, something like this. So them extending the line into cleaning robots made a lot of sense over the last years. So yeah, we have the situation right now. Means a lot of competition. We don't expect all of these manufacturers to survive the next 5 years for sure. So it will be very exciting. But I think it's great for the industry and it just helps us to roll out autonomous cleaning because we can choose from so many products right now, and there's so much money and brain going into this industry.
And I think one topic that you're touching on is actually the importance of the economics of the region itself, right? So is there a reflection in the research, in the rankings, you'd say about the economics, logistics, economics, logic f across the different regions?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, we touched some of these topics when we talked about retail.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the US, you have outsourced labor for cleaning. So you have like direct cost savings in case you're able to deploy robots. In Europe, you have to, implement these robots into your staff's workflows. So it's more like, can I take away some of the work or make that work easier so it can use my staff differently? So it's more about workflow automation, not just
Mhm.
cutting headcount, as brutal as this might sound. In Asia, we will have to. I think at least Biggest Fleet still has to understand um, how this rollout mechanics might work. We see some nation scale deployments, particularly when governments are pushing it. So, for example, Singapore has like governmental programs for rolling out robots. They are
Mhm.
subsidized, so they really want to see automation here. We do know Japan has concepts that are very similar, also because of their aging population. So, whether it's governments playing this from a hygienic perspective or from a catering to the people perspective, I think these are like that might be major drivers for Asia, but it's not as crystal clear as the US and Europe yet.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, retail is like the ROI giver, uh, and we might see some very similar logic in the public sector soon.
Cool. And actually, just a question around the specific category that is a missing product category. Could you explain what it is and could it help reshape?
Yeah. I mean, we're working on Biggest Fleet. We're from FieldBots pushing this initiative. So whenever we travel, be it like meeting distributors all over the world or going to trade shows, or particularly when we go to China, um, we get asked like what's missing, like what machine is missing, or we get actually a lot of requests. I'm looking for this particular machine for this specific use case. Is there something? And the one single thing everybody's waiting for is a small scrubber, which means like wet cleaning. It's a microbot, not like a big machine. So we're not talking about a Gaussian Fantas or Poodle CC1. Cut these
Mhm.
machines in half. And I think that would be a big market, particularly in Asia and Europe, because we have like smaller floor spaces to clean. We can't just do vacuuming. We really also need wet scrubbing, but
Mhm.
it's difficult to engineer because these machines are relatively small. They have to be real scrubbers, like hygienically, mechanically cleaning the floors. You have like small pipes, small water tanks. You need a lot of pressure on these machines to put this pressure from the brushes onto the floors. So I think it's a difficult engineering task. We are
Mhm.
talking to a lot of manufacturers in China right now that think about these concepts. I do think there will be companies coming up with concept like this, but right now it's really missing. The market is desperately looking for it. So invitation to all the people watching. If you have something in mind, you saw something, just let Barbara or me know. We would be very eager to learn about this. How to use it? Small retail, gas stations, kiosks, mini markets. We have a lot of convenience stores in Asia. So it's a high volume potential. And yeah, the current devices are just too big, too expensive, or they're not serious enough in terms of brushing. They just use roller brushes or roller mops. It's not what the market needs. So yeah, let's see if this new category one day arises. I expect it to be away like another 2 or 3 years, so we have to wait, but it would unlock thousands of new locations.
Yeah, absolutely. Opportunity is absolutely there. Um, to summarize, if you had to summarize 2025 for Biggest Fleet, what changed the most? We touched upon the comparison. But for your personal opinion, if we were to know
Yeah,
what's the point.
I think it became, way more representative of what's happening in the industry. So going from 42 fleets to 97, now covering at least 14,000 robots, gives you another insight. And I do think people listening to this podcast, going through the list, the ranking, or downloading the magazine, there's a lot of like depth to it, and we understand things way better. And I do think we can already identify what's next in some sort. I find Asia super interesting. Like with doubling the presence, I'm quite sure we're gonna focus on research for Asia in 2026, even more so.
Mhm.
We discussed the public sector. It's like one of the things that's hidden behind retail, but I do think from 230 to 746 radar points is quite a lot.
Mhm.
Poodle was an absolute surprise with you as a retail. I'm really
Mhm.
happy for these guys, and I'm happy for the North American market that there's like a new alternative that is ready for rollouts. And yeah, you see Europe. I mean, we're also moving beyond pilots. It's our European ways of going from the dozens into the hundreds into the thousands. That's how we do it. But we'll nevertheless do it. And seeing the Baltics coming and maybe adding something to our European way of doing robotics is great. And we're happy these guys are joining. And in general, like the market isn't really getting simpler. More we talked about fragmentation, diversification because of like the different cleaning scenarios. So I think it will stay exciting. And yeah, I'm 2024 was more of a balloon. Like, is something like this needed? Can we actually learn something from it? And now in 2025, it's really like, we can draw a comparison to last year, and we can think about next year. And we see this growth, and what can we learn from it? What have we cracked already, and what's still something people desperately are tinkering around with? And I think that makes our work so exciting.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Roll on 2026. Can't wait for the growth to be reflected next year. And thank you so much, Alex, for sharing all your insights.
Thanks, Barbara. Thanks for your questions. It was a nice conversation, and potentially see you in 2026.
Yeah, hopefully. See you. Bye.
Thanks, Barbara.